We want to build the #1 international baseball league.
Oh, what a catch! What a catch, baby!
Like I said, I feel blessed.
The pitcher grabbed by Schlitter goes to the force of the plate.
Ground ball, double play, game over.
Wow! This is a money ball, gentlemen, and this. Oh, money ball!
Welcome back to the Baseball United podcast, the premier voice of international baseball. I'm your host, Liam Skiffington. Got a special episode for you guys today as we delve into a remarkable journey through baseball's diverse roles and cultural landscapes. And I thought, who better to guide us through this than a veteran with over 40 years in professional baseball, from the playing fields to the executive offices. Joining us today is our very own Vice President of Baseball Operations, Eddie Diaz. Eddie, absolutely thrilled to have you here. Thanks for joining.
Thank you so much for having me. And it makes me feel younger with all the energy that you have.
I appreciate that. So, Eddie, real quick before we dive into everything, can you give us a snapshot of your incredible 40-year journey in baseball, covering everything from, like I said, a player to the executive offices?
Well, I was born in the Dominican Republic, actually, and signed by the Yankees. I spent one season with the Yankees, another season with the Braves, and then I spent another 4 seasons with the Cleveland Indians. And then I bounced around a little bit here and there. Oh, and then I became an associate scout later on in New York. And then 14 years later, I came back to professional baseball as an agent, believe it or not. And I was a certified agent. Most of our customers actually was in Japan and Korea. We have a few guys in the big league. There was another gentleman and I, which today is like my brother, young guy, Christopher Fanta. We founded the company. We did pretty well. He's still doing it. And I ended in Mexico as an agent, and by something crazy of an owner, rest in peace, which I owe a lot of my second life of baseball, Chara Mansour, the father of Jose Antonio Mansour, who owns the Laredo team, as well Roberto Mansour, who used to be owner of the Diablos and later was a president. He retired. And Chara Mansour one day asked me, after I brought in a couple of scouts, he asked me if I know any manager, and I asked him why. He says, well, because I need a manager to finish the season. And he goes, by the way, what time do you leave in tomorrow? He goes, it's 6 o'clock in the morning. And I got to go to Veracruz, Houston, Chicago. And he says, well, I got the manager already. I said, yeah, who's that is? He goes, that's you. So I said, me, I never managed in my life, and I've been out of the game for 14 years. So I went to meet with Jose Antonio Mansour, which we all know by Pepe. And he started giving me numbers. I said, listen, I never managed in my life, not even literally. Let's do something. If I win, give me $200. If I lose, don't pay me. And everything, that's how it started. And if you ask me, and in the side of baseball, who did I owe my career in the game of baseball, is actually the Mexican Baseball League.
So, Eddie, what was your highest level you reached as a player?
Oh, A-ball. I was one of those guys who had tools that never went anywhere. I mean, I know how, I've been in a couple of big league camps, instructionally, but nothing see more than what it was.
So you were a player for how many years? Remind me. I apologize.
Well, and I went from 1980 with the Yankees, 81 with the Atlanta Braves, both of them in the Gulf Coast League, the GCL. Then with the Indians, the high was Waterloo, Iowa, which that's my home. That's how I met my wife. We have Diane, which the love of my life, 39 years marriage. And we have 4 kids, Amanda, Haley, Tyler, and Dylan. And we got 6 beautiful grandkids, 5 girls and 1 boy.
5 girls and 1 boy. Wow.
Exactly.
God bless that boy. So what made you leave you mentioned you had a 14-year gap in between that. What made you originally leave the game of baseball?
Well, when I was in the Dominican Republic, I was playing in the winter. I came one day and I said to myself, well, I need to do something different than what I'm doing. So I decided to go to New York with my wife. It was very tough at the beginning. Our home was actually in a room in Jackson Heights, Queens. And I start working in different places. And then one day I say to myself, as long as I think from my neck all the way down, I'm going to cost $10 an hour. And my neck all the way up, the skies have to be the limit. And I find a sales job, and I work for a real estate company that sells property in Florida. Then I work for MetLife. Then I work for New York Life. And the way that I came back in the game is when I met this young guy at that time, Chris Fanta, which I love him like a brother. We started talking to open a sport agency, and that's how I got back to the game after 14 years.
And then you spent another almost 4 decades in it, right?
Yeah, it's been a great ride, and once again, I have to tell you this from the bottom of my heart. Being in Mexico all these years, in and out. I mean, for 25 years, I've been in Mexican baseball, and that's a lot of say. It's a great positive things. You know, some people say probably some negative, which they probably don't know the root. I mean, the Mexican baseball league is getting to 100 years old. And also I don't want to forget all my success is actually in the Winter League, with a team named Jackies de Obregon, another city that I love very much.
So while we're on the topic of your extensive experience, Eddie, let's dive into your current involvement with our organization, Baseball United. How did you originally get started with us?
I got a crazy phone call from Victor Campos. And I see this guy telling me about, there's going to be a baseball in Dubai. So I was not actually all in. And later I spoke with John Mildridge, which he's my direct boss, by the way. And he's a gentleman that I really have a lot to respect because he's so young with such a long career and expertise overseas. But anyway, when we're going back and forth, and I decided, okay, let me do this because I've always been up to a challenge in my life, and that's what life is all about. I mean, what you're going to do tomorrow, but you have to start today, and that was the beginning. Later, when I met Cash, I see somebody with a lot of ambition, craziness in him, that he wants to get better day in and day out. And those little things motivate me to actually be 110%.
So what was it about our mission that really resonated with you when you first learned about our organization?
Well, it was a very positive being a student in meetings with Mariano Rivera and Barry Larkin at the beginning. And they actually were blended with Cash, John, and the rest of the group, bringing baseball to these 2 billion people. I mean, it's exciting. I mean, when you go to the other side of the world and say, okay, this is what we're going to build. This is what you young people are going to learn what it is. Because baseball has so many things interested in life. I mean, if you know that it's like opera. It looks like it started boring and ended so great. I mean, in opera, you go to the show and people start singing and there's nothing happening, and then you're crying. And cricket, which is so popular over there, I always say there's only 2 sports that the defense had the ball in their hand. So I believe there was a lot of compliments in there that makes me believe that this is going to be great, and it will be.
So Eddie, could you describe your current role, like what you do for us on the day-to-day?
Well, the beauty about our Baseball United is you have one role and you have 1,000 roles.
Yeah.
So mine is recruit players, direct players, execute rosters, look for coaches, execute roster for coaches, oversee some scouting done by Carlos Mirabal, which is doing a pretty good job. At the same time, be patient enough to understand everybody wants to go play one day in that part of the world.
So yeah, my next question for you, Eddie, was going to be, when you're talking to these players, quote unquote, recruiting them, what's the feedback you're getting? Like, is everyone ready, like chomping at the bit, ready to get over there?
Everybody wants to go there, and we have our criteria. We have our actually we have to. It's not just how good is as a baseball player, but it makeup have to do a lot with it. I mean, we're looking for a lot of scenarios, and we have a database about 1,000+ players, and we want to make sure that we are being fair with the players that we explain they're going to be in the database list, and then from there it's a draft of signing them as a free agent if they're going to be part of it. Remember, we had an exhibition All-Star game last year. We got a whole bunch of big leaguers, ex-big leaguers, and I get phone calls day in and day out, and everybody wants to go, but it's only 4 clubs right now.
You mentioned the scenarios certain players have to be in. What are some of those scenarios?
Well, first of all, he needs to be playing. I mean, one day I have an email from somebody I'd never heard in my life, and he wants to talk to me. So I think I'm pretty good returning phone calls and calling individuals or players that I never heard about. And I got a long conversation with this young man, and he never played before. He doesn't have any track record. He just played in high school, and he was playing in the weekends. And when I explained to him the whole thing, he was very pleased, and he says, "Thank you so much. I understand now, because it's been in the past that people sell dreams. We sell the real dreams to play baseball in another part of the world, but we don't sell the wrong dreams. We don't want people, or we don't want young players to believe that tomorrow you give me a phone call and that means that you already own our organization. It's a process, and we want to be very clear as an organization how we're going to do this."
How big of a role does character play in recruiting these players?
It's big. It's big. You have to, you have to be way beyond of a professional in your position, because it's questions that you get asked that you have to have the right answer.
Yep. So, Eddie, how would you say that your diverse experience, you've been in Mexico, you've been in the Dominican Republic, how would you say that experience in baseball shapes your approach to your current position?
It's beautiful. I born in the Dominican Republic. My home is Waterloo, Iowa, and I've been doing all my job the last 25 years in Mexico. And I'm going to tell you this. 2012, I got a phone call from the Dominican Republic to manage the Toros. And, after winning back-to-back titles in the Winter League in Mexico with Yankees of Obregon, I made the decision to go to Dominican, because at that time my older brother was pretty ill, and I want to be close to them. I want to be close to the family. I want to have the experience of managing my own country that I was born, and things doesn't work out the right way. So when they not work out the right way, then I got released, and I ended back in Mexico with the same team, winning the 3 titles in a row. And now we in Hermosillo playing the final game. Playing the final game against the Dominican Republic. And I remember one of my favorite players, Douglas Clark, which is mutual friend, you and I.
Yep, Dougie Clark.
And Dougie said to me in the top of the 18th inning, "Don't worry, skipper. The game will be over soon." And he hit a home run. We got 3 outs. Matter of fact, Marlon Byrd was playing right field for me. It was the last out catch by him. And that's the beauty of a sport. I mean, imagine, I was there in the yard. I was let go. I don't want to manage. I got an offer from other clubs, and my team of my love of my club, the Obregon, called me. I don't want to go back either. I want to be in Dominican with my kids, because they don't even know Dominican Republic. And my oldest daughter, Amanda, and my second daughter, Haley, they told me, says, "Hey, Dad, why you don't go back? Maybe you guys win again. It's going to be history. Nobody has done it in Mexico in the winter, winning 3 championships in a row, and you will be the first Latino to do that." So that's the beauty of the game, and what you experience day in and day out.
So you mentioned the 3 championships that you won in a row. What I think a lot of people don't know, Eddie, is that you also won 5 championships in the matter of 3 years. Is that correct?
Yeah, we was lucky enough, because we win 3 times in a row, and then we went to the Caribbean Series and win 2 more. So that's why it's 5 altogether. And one time is you're gonna laugh with this. It's somebody in the media post that the Giant has been so great because they win 3 out of 5. and then somebody from Oregon posted, "What about 5-3? How's that? How's that?" And but that was a great ride. A whole bunch of guys that I never forget. Our organization, a city that I love, and that's been my life actually in baseball, Mexico.
In your current role with us, Eddie, how are you working to make baseball more inclusive and diverse through your role with us?
Well, to me, it's important to stay in touch with all the players that we draft in our 30-some countries that we actually recruiting. You know, like once in a while, I can pick the phone and call Alberto Mineo, one of the catchers, you know, in Italy, or Vincent Aarons in Germany, calling some of the guys. And I'm going to give you an indication. Cash says to me one day, and John, we need to have good umpires, guy with experience. And I said, look, I know a lot of guys with experience, but if you want to get somebody with diversity and also with a lot of energy, I can get a couple of, you know, from Mexico. And I remember he says, well, you're in charge, make sure that they here on time, because that was something happened with some others that we have. And I went directly to them, and then John gave me the number of a couple from Czech Republic. And I think that's the beauty of baseball, that we need to actually not only announce that we're doing it, but make sure we get it done. Like when we have the first player in the All-Star game last year who hit the home run was Alex Levy. He's the first Italian to being signed and playing the big league. And that's what we're looking for. We need more of that. I mean, some of the statistics that we show is that amount of young individuals playing the game of baseball overseas and in that part of the world is huge. And I get texts, I get emails, I get sometimes phone calls, and we're gonna be active. We're gonna make sure that we're gonna have the best, not only show on the ground, but at the same time building the best talent that can be around.
Looking forward, Eddie, what kind of legacy do you hope to leave with our organization?
Well, I just want to be somebody that want to be part of something that's going to be so big, and because the only way do you believe in a dream if you really dream with it. And my legacy would be a person that likes to do the right thing, put the bricks together with the other one to build a building, and make sure they sit in the back and enjoy the ride.
You mentioned our co-founder and CEO, Cash Shake. Eddie, I have a question for you about the leadership within our organization. As someone who's been around many teams, around many great teams, someone who's also managed and led, what can you say about the leadership here and how it's kind of led the company forward?
It's a good question. A lot of people always ask about leadership, but I'm gonna describe him very short and sweet. He's a man that he is hard, but he practices what he preaches. I mean, he push you, but he pushes himself more than anybody. And he might be hard, but he's fair. So he has the right ingredients to be a good leader. And in my opinion, he is a good leader, because when somebody gets up in the morning at 5 o'clock and hit you with a phone call, and he asking you how your project is going, it's not just that he's pushing you to push you. I mean, he already got up at 5 in the morning to fight the fight that we all actually put in place to be successful.
So you've made significant strides, Eddie, obviously on a global scale within the realm of baseball. Taking a step back now to where it all began, can you share a little bit more to our audience about your early years in the game and what initially drew you to it?
Well, baseball was not my passion. My passion always been Taekwondo, which is my black belt in Taekwondo. And my first sport that I really loved back then was basketball. I broke an ankle, played in school, and my dad got so upset. He goes, "Why you don't stop playing the dumb game and play baseball?" And I used to have a very good arm, so I started playing the game of baseball. and I was signed by the Yankees. Rest in peace, Will Calvino, one of the best scouts that ever came out of Cuba. But I was not that. And let me tell you this: baseball is, if people look at it, it's more than a sport. Baseball is a family, a reunion of individuals in one dugout. That's what I learned when I managed all those years. If you know how to deal with players in the clubhouse and understand the nature of each of those individuals, life is going to become easier. And I learned that very, very early.
Eddie, I'm curious, could you tell me a little bit about the dynamics of the minor leagues when you first started compared to how they are now?
It's not even close, let me tell you. When back in the days you put the uniform, that's how you stretch, that's how you practice, that's how you ended the day. Right now they have shorts, they got t-shirts, they got shoes. And when we get used to get our lunch was a cup of soup with crackers, and the juice was the Gatorade. Oh, it's totally different. It's crazy. I spent 10 years as international scout with the Rays, and every time I see the lunches, and when I used to visit Port Charlotte in the training camp, it's amazing. It's crazy. I mean, those days, I remember when I was with the Yankees, and we have to go to the field in Denny at Hollywood. We have to walk like 2 miles to get to the park. Now these kids, they put them in a nice van, bring them back and forth. The game is easier, totally easier.
Were there any specific mentors or events early on in your career, Eddie, that you would say significantly shaped your trajectory as a baseball player, baseball executive, baseball manager, all of it?
Well, it's been many, but one individual that I really, from the bottom of my heart, I always going to say thank you is Chara Mansour. Because remember, I came back to the game of baseball, and as an agent, it was something crazy. I was broke at that time, and I just want to get into the sport. And this man has some vision. I don't know from where, because when I asked him, why do you think I could be a manager? He says, you remind me of Winston Janis. And Winston Janis is an icon from the Dominican Republic. He was a player, he was a manager, he was a GM, and he was a president, part owner of Águilas, very successful. And when he said that to me, it really clicked. And then in 2007, because I used to manage the game, Liam, but I was not looking to be a manager. I managed the game because I can bring my players to Mexico, and then from Mexico, they can go to either Korea or Japan. Mm-hmm. But one day, that was in 2007, Rene Gallo, to me, one of the best scouts in the game, used to be with Cleveland and Pittsburgh. He approached me with Pepe Mansour, and they told me, he says, listen, you're really good at what you do, but you don't take it seriously. Why? You're so good managing people and also dealing with the bullpen. Why you don't take this serious and sell some of your business? And that's what I did. I saw a basketball team that I used to have, a couple of boxers. I saw my share to my ex-partner in the sport, agency. And I dedicate time to manage. And that's when the success start coming in. So Chara Mansour, to me, is going to have a special place in my heart on the day until I die.
Did I just hear you correctly? You owned a basketball team?
Yeah, that was one of my crazy things that I did back then. There was a league.
Tell me a little bit about
the
that.
IBL.
Wow.
It was a basketball team that we used to have in Waterloo, Iowa. One of my players for one game was Dennis Rodman. Great guy.
Dennis Rodman, NBA Hall of Famer, Dennis Rodman?
Yeah. And another gentleman who played one game, which I appreciate him so much, was Tim Hardaway.
Tim Hardaway?
Yeah.
What was your experience like? I know this is a baseball podcast, and we'll get right back to baseball, but I'd be remiss if I didn't ask, what was your experience like with those two, Eddie?
Oh, it was great. Tim Hardaway was a professional. He says to me, hey, I go and play one game for you, no problem. He scored like 55 points. and Dennis and his agent, they were good people. Dennis supposed to be playing some amount of minutes. He played more than that. And what a great guy. I mean, if you spend time with him and you get to know him, it's great. It's been few guys that I do little things here and there. We have somebody that we know in common as well, Jose Canseco.
Jose Canseco, yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
I brought him to Obregon to do some charity work for kids with cancer. That's one of my passions, find a way how to help people.
So you do a lot of charity work, Eddie. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Well, I've done it in different parts of the country in the past in Mexico, but that city, which my family and I love very much, Obregon, I concentrated with kids with cancer and little girls that has been abused. So I did speeches, I did clinics, I brought Canseco for a home run derby. We packed like 9,000 people. And there was like a lane of 3 years that I was very active doing all those activities. And, that's my passion. I learned it from my mom. My mom was a human being that always wants to be helping people. I remember in 1985 when I was laying in bed and she says to me, "Hey, get up." I said, what's going on? The world's ending? And she goes, "Get up and tell your dad to take the car out and tell the maid to get some boxes." And she started putting clothes in the box. And we were going. And then we driving to a TV place. There was some activities. And she's donating all these clothes in a check. $1,000 back then was good money. And guess what? It was for the people in Mexico because of the earthquake in 1985. So one of the things that my mom always told me is, I can never go to Mexico because she used to suffer from high blood pressure for the altitude. But please, when you get there, get to know more and tell me about it. And that was that I got that from my mom. My mom was very passionate to helping people.
Wow. So a bit of a transition now, Eddie. That was a beautiful story. And thank you for all the charitable and philanthropic work you do all around the world. Your playing days definitely offered a solid foundation to your baseball career. But I'm curious to know, what was the transition to scouting and management like for you?
Scouting was easy, but I was not a typical scout. Like, it's great scouts up there that I know. Like I mentioned Rene, Ramon Peña from the Dominican Republic, Epi Guerrero, rest in peace. Al Avila from Cuba, who lives in Dominican, rest in peace, Pablo Peguero, rest in peace, who signed Adrian Beltre. But the beauty of scouting is, how can you detect somebody that is going to be a Major League Baseball player? I'm going to tell you, in my 10 years with the Rays, which is a great organization, and they have great scouts up there, it's an organization that I always going to say thank you because they were pretty good to me. And I got something that I have to share. I called one day my direct boss, Patrick Walter, and I say, "Patrick, I need permission to bring this player to the academy." And he says, "Sure, talk to Steve Miller." And I talked to Steve and I talked to Carlos Rodriguez. And that player from Mexico came in, and to cut the story short, so we decided we're not going to proceed to sign him. And I believe in that kid so much that I say, just give me that money because this guy's going to play in the big league. And I was told that he doesn't have probably the tools and he doesn't have the body. And 3 years later, we know that Alejandro Kirk was in the big league with the Blue Jays. Mm-hmm. So going back to scouting, the beauty of a scout is to find out how that kid is going to have a major league uniform. I don't have that. I was more a field guy. I was more as a manager, a coach, but it's exciting when you see how these people do their scouting. Just to see a guy walking, they find out just right and then if he's going to be in the major league or not.
So I'm curious, Eddie, and I think our audience would also like to know, how do the skills required for being a scout differ from the skills of being a player?
Well, you mean a coach, because when you're scouting, you see far and beyond. When you coaching, you instructing. So to me, when I used to get players, me as a manager, they used to ask me, how can you deal with players so easy? I said, well, one of the things that I do in my life is I have to understand the nature of the player. When I used to manage, it doesn't matter how late was the game and what time I went to bed. 10 o'clock in the morning, I was in the office. I went and talked to my GM and my president, and then got back to my office, put some shorts on, and watched the game the night before. So, and then I went to the locker room to make sure everything is in place, because the worst thing that you want is when a player comes to the locker room and it's already start bitching. So I watch their faces one by one, so I know what I'm going to deal. Because managing to me is be a good salesman to your players to make them believe they all collectively, we're going to play hard. And if you have a problem, just come to me. So coaching, when you understand the nature of a baseball player, becomes so easy. And in a scout is you have to learn to have that touch of a vision. If that guy that you just saw is going to be in the big league one day. And it's a lot of scouts that they have that.
So when you're scouting, Eddie, even now when you're choosing players to play on our teams here at Baseball United, what kind of specific attributes, if any, are you prioritizing when you're looking at these guys? I know a lot of our guys have former major league experience, former professional experience, but still, as they get older, those skills kind of diminish a little bit. No.
Well, it depends on the individual. I mean, we have guys like Alex Lady, who at one time he retired, become a coach. And I said, but you're too young to retire. I mean, you young also to be a coach. You know, it's easier for you to get to the big league. But he wants to play. I mean, one of the things that, Cash, John, and I spoke one day is we need good players, but also Liam, good makeup. People that represent our organization the right way. And recruit players for Baseball United is easy because they're already playing. The part that we want to know is his personal life. We don't want to get involved in the personal life, but we need players with good makeups. Because remember, when we fly these players 7,000, 8,000 miles away, they representing Baseball United. And we want to make sure that we do put a good product on the ground, but at the same time, we have behind Cash, John, but we have also 22 legends that need to be represented the right way. So that's one of the criteria that I really put a very emphasis, and I'm very strong. Makeup must be good.
So Eddie, after transitioning to after being a scout, you transitioned to more of a leadership role. Tell us a little bit about your experience managing in the Mexican League, if you could.
Oh, it's beautiful. Because through the years, I remember that my first time when Chara Mansour and Jose Antonio Mansour, they said, well, you never manage, be in the dugout, and you get to know a little thing. I said, perfect. So the city that I started was in Córdoba, Veracruz. They used to be the cafetero, the coffee team. And I remember that, rest in peace, the gentleman that was managing until I take over the next day, he asked the bench coach, what am I going to do now? I should bring the lefty against the lefty. And he says, don't worry about it. And I say, hey, you got to bring the lefty against the lefty. But I know that he doesn't want to leave the dugout because what people saying up there, because they're very aggressive. So when he went up there and came back, they threw him a dirty diaper. So the first thing I said to myself was, this is what's waiting for me. And through the years, it's nothing that I enjoy the most to manage in the Mexican League, especially in the winter. I have a blast. It was great. I'm going to tell you this, Liam. 2010, we went in my first championship when we going to Puerto Rico. Mexico have now won for 7 years. And when we arrived in Puerto Rico, the first thing they say, oh, here we go again, Mexico. They call them patito feos, like ugly dogs. And I say, well, those days are over because we're not going to travel 3,000 miles to lose. And I remember that we waiting to see who win Puerto Rico, Dominican. If Dominican win, we claim to be the winner. And we at the bar. The one who owns that team at that time was the beer company. And they closed the bar just for us. And everybody's drinking. I asked for one drink. And I only have one sip of that drink for 9 innings. And when I hear about Mexico, I started crying. That was unbelievable because I never in my life I thought after being released as a baseball player, being out of the game for 14 years, and after 14 years came back as an agent, and from an agent become a manager, and now I'm a winner of the Caribbean Series. So that's why in life I always tell this in my speeches that I do. And one that I really stuck in people's head when PepsiCo in Mexico asked me to do some speech engagement for their employees, I always tell them this: God delayed, but He don't deny anything. And if you believe in something, all you need to do is pay the high price, and you will be fine. So here I was out of the game, and now look at this. I've been a blessed. My life has been a blessed.
Eddie, so could you talk about a little bit about some of the challenges you faced when managing, like in game, particularly when it comes to managing players, not necessarily calling a hit and run or something like that, or arguing with an umpire, but managing these players? I'm not sure off the top of my head. How many guys are on a Mexican League roster?
Well, I can go from 28 to 30.
Okay, 28 to 30. So you're managing 28 to 30 egos. How did you approach that?
Understanding of the nature, like I just told you before. If you understand the nature of a player, it becomes easier. If you have patience. Every time I come to the locker room, I put a big brick wall in front of me. Any problem that they have, it's not going to create problems to me for me to create problems for the rest of the players. Because as soon as the manager thinks that he has a magic touch, he's wrong. I asked Tony La Russa one day when I met him. I don't know if he remember that or he remember me. And I asked him, I said, what do you need to be a good manager? He says, you need players. You need good players. So you're not going to do magic. You can win games and people are going to say to you, oh, he can be a good manager. But be a good manager, you have to have the players and you got to have coaches. And I was surrounded by good players. Some of them, scrappy guys, some of them with a lot of talent. But I'm going to tell you this. In 2013, when we played 18 innings against the Dominican Republic, I know they have a whole bunch of big leaguers. But you know what? I have good players. I have good players. And if you motivate them and you make them believe that they're ready to pay for the price and they jump on you back and say, okay, Superman, we're going with you, times becomes easier. And everything is in life. If in life you pay a price day in and day out and you know exactly what you want, you're going to get it done. I don't know if you're going to get it done in 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, a week, or a month. And I was not born to play in the big league, but I was born to manage big league.
So you're a Mexican League champion. You're a Caribbean Series champion. You won 5 championships within 3 years, which is still absolutely incredible to me. I don't know that anyone in the history of sports has done that, Eddie. Are there any other accolades that I'm missing from your illustrious career that you could tell me about?
Well, I got things in my life that make me proud of my patience and not looking for anything in reward. I remember when in 2001 I was managing in the Mexican League, and I had a phone call from Frank Wren. At that time, he was assistant GM with the Atlanta Braves.
Yep.
And he used to call me and ask me for different players. And he asked me about Julio Franco. And I asked him, I said, what do you want to know about Julio? He goes, you think he still can hit? I say, of course he can hit. What about his makeup? I say, Julio's playing like he's 15 years old. And it really was. I mean, Julio was hitting a ground ball to shortstop. He was running 4-2 to first base. And to cut the story short, one day he went back. They signed him. He went back to the big league. Frank says to me, thank you so much. And one day I find out that I was all over the book, Built to Win, which is written by John Schuerhoff, giving me some credit. Oh, Jose Ramirez, which I'm managing in Dominican, and I see this young guy passing behind my back, walking here, walking there with so much energy. And I said to my pitching coach, I said, hey, you know what? I'm going to put that kid in the lineup tomorrow because he got so much energy and so passionate what he's doing. He hasn't not taken one at bat yet. I put him in the lineup. He went 0 for 4 with 2 strikeouts. I put him in the lineup again. He got 2 hits. And to cut the story short, we met in the Caribbean Series. He playing for Escogido as a reinforced player. And 2 years later, he's in the big league. So those 2 things is really marking my life because it's those little things that you remember that you're part of it. I mean, I'm not looking for any credit, and it happened also with Felix Jose. Felix Jose playing the big league with St. Louis and Oakland, and he was in the Korean League. I went to see him over there when I was an agent, and I told him, you're going to go back to the big league. And my mission was, how can I convince the Yankees and get him a minor league deal invited to the big league camp? And it did happen. So you can have so many little things in your life that become big in the end. But if you're not looking for any credit, it's more sweetness into it. So
I'm glad you bring up Julio Franco and Jose Ramirez. I actually was reading the book Built to Win by John Schuerholz, Eddie. I have the specific excerpt. I was wondering if this was about you, but just so the audience knows, here's the excerpt from the book. We then plugged into our network of sources and scouts for an assessment and began monitoring Julio's play daily as the Tigres were winding down their regular season. Although he had earlier stints with 7 different major league teams, there was not as much fresh information readily available on Julio. He began bouncing around the globe, playing 1 season in Japan and 2 in Mexico. Among those whose input we sought was one of the opposition managers in the Mexican League, Eddie Diaz, a friend and contact of Frank Renz. When asked how he did against the top pitchers in that league, Diaz said, Julio hits everybody. He can still play. He's outstanding around first base and is in phenomenal condition. So you were super influential and a pivotal person in Julio Franco, the 23-year big league veteran, getting back to the major leagues with the Atlanta Braves.
Well, that's actually what somebody says to me. He says, did he ever say thank you to you? I mean, I said, I'm not looking at anything of that. I'm just looking forward to be a part of history because this man came back and played until he was 50. But and I did it more because Frank Wren is a gentleman. I know Frank way back. As a matter of fact, one time he wants me to bring a left-handed pitcher from Mexico, rest in peace, Narciso Elvira, a very good lefty. And I brought him over there. He almost signed him. So my wife always says to me, you don't like the spotlight now like you used to. I say, no, I don't. My spotlight is to be with my wife, watching her beautiful face, watching my beautiful kids grow up already, my grandkids, and put every energy that I have, because life is very short and complicated, and, we should not make it worse.
Absolutely. Eddie, I'm curious to know your thoughts. So Julio Franco, like we said, 23-year big league veteran. That's very difficult to do. Only a handful of the 15,000 or so people that have touched a major league players that have touched a major league field have had a career that long. In your opinion, is Julio Franco a Hall of Famer?
Hall of Fame means a lot. I mean, it's you got to go to another level situation. I mean, he got good numbers. It's not me to judge. I think if you ask me, if you're one of the people who choose in Hall of Fame, I think the standard will be very high. I'm a little bit old-fashioned when it comes to those players. They put really big numbers back then. But I tell you what, the endurance that Julio have is unbelievable because he came back to the Mexican League after the big league, and he can still swing, and it's crazy. But if you see him, his condition is unbelievable. He's in great shape.
Still to this day, I bet, right? He's probably about 65 or so today?
Well, he got to be a little older because I'm 61, so I think he's probably 62, 63, but he looks pretty strong.
Wow. Jeez. Eddie, so managing teams in Mexico and being of Latin American descent, it must have given you unique insights into the challenges some of these Latin American players face. Could you maybe elaborate on some of these challenges for our audience, just so they understand like what these players in Latin America go through in order to make it to the next level?
Well, I'm going to be very honest with you. You know what's tough in life? When you got to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, jump in a train in New York and clock, in a factory. I mean, when I hear that people go through so much playing the game of baseball, you getting paid for what you love to do. I don't care how hard. I remember one time that my son Tyler, my older boy, he's playing in some small league in Mexico, in Veracruz. And the GM called me. He goes, Eddie, can you ask Tyler what do he think about the food that we're serving? Because some other players are complaining. I said, my son never going to complain because he got that from his dad and his mom. So I think it's challenging life because you got so many other people that compete, Liam. But the accommodation that baseball give you today is much easier. It's much easier. I mean, if you believe that that's what you want to do and you pay a price day in and day out and you have goals in your life and you're ready to go through the hurdles, you'll be fine because baseball is not just a game, it's a career. If you do not make it to the big league, you can become a front office, you can become a coach, you can become a scout. But a lot of players, they take the game so light. In reality, what you need to do is say, okay, I'm going to be in the big league in 4 years or 5 years. If it doesn't happen, hey, I wait. God delayed, but don't deny it anything. But at the same time, I'm going to find out if I have other attributes that I can be part of the games. I tell you what, my first manager in baseball never played professional baseball. Carlos Tosca. Never. And he managed in the big league. And sometimes you do things in life and you realize if I would have listened to the other individual's experience, things will become easier. So it's like the language. You need to learn the language. You have to learn the language. That's where you come and work. Instead of saying, well, but I'm going to have a translator. I was so amazed and so happy for De La Cruz when in an interview, he says, I want to speak the language.
Yep.
So,
Eddie De La Cruz. Yeah, that clip came out earlier this season. Absolutely incredible. It almost brought a tear to my eye just because like you could see the joy on his face, Eddie, when he was like, I want to be able to communicate. He's obviously a superstar and communicating with the fans. I think he specifically said the fans need to be able to understand me. It's an absolutely beautiful sentiment. And I don't think a lot of people fully understand how difficult that is for some of these guys to come over here, learn English, and be like skyrocketed to fame as quickly as especially Eddie De La Cruz was.
I agree with you. And that day also almost brought tears to my eyes because that was excellent. That was perfect. I'm not saying that it's not problems in between because either you, red, white, black, blue, or whatever, it's always going to be something in between of that race. But I think the game is easier because there's more things that you can get. I mean, if you have a little problem, you have a doctor right there. So I think what my message to the younger players or young people in this day is go to the resources and go to the people that can help you and look at good models. We got, even in our organization, in Baseball United, if you look at the guys in uniform that we have, the legends, I mean, Barry Larkin is an example. He signed out of college. He went to AA. Big challenge. A lot of guys go to AA, doesn't succeed, and they got to go back to rookie. You know what? He took advantage. He went to AA, and he went to the big league. And he's a Hall of Famer. Adrian Beltre, Mariano Rivera, like somebody like Albert Pujols. Nobody actually take any look of him in Dominican. He comes to the state, moved to Kansas City. He was drafted in junior college, and look, another Hall of Famer. So you got to take advantage of the time, because the only thing that is not stay and never return is time. You give me $100 or you give me time, I always say $100 I can spend it tomorrow, but the time has so much value, it's unbelievable. And life goes on and on and on very quick.
Speaking of Hall of Fame, Eddie, correct me if I'm wrong. You're a member of 2 Hall of Fames, aren't you?
Well, they small Hall of Fames. It's one.
No. No Hall of Fame is small. No Hall of Fame is small.
Well, that's one is in the Dominican Republic, in the city that I was born. I was inducted 2014, I think it was. And 2 years ago, I was inducted in the Yankees of Obregon Hall of Fame as a manager. And I got another one that's, I think I'm going to be part of it pretty soon. But I've been blessed. I've been blessed because I came to New York City with my wife. We got $220 in our pocket. But I have a 1,000 dream and 1,000 desire. If I meet my wife again, I marry her again. She'd be my bone, my support, and I had a great life.
Eddie, you're going to bring a tear to my eye on this show. Come on, man. You can't do that. That's absolutely beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. How would you say, Eddie, since you got involved in baseball, that the Dominican specifically and Mexico as well have evolved in terms of nurturing baseball talent?
Well, the talent in Dominican is unbelievable. I mean, it's crazy. I always tell people that you shake a tree and young guy comes out of that tree throwing 100 miles an hour. I mean, the physical ability is unbelievable. Venezuela as well. Mexico have good baseball. It's a lot of story about Mexico, but I do defend the Mexican baseball league in the summer. They done a lot. I mean, they bring a great host to so many other players from other countries that is unbelievable. Like right now, they are selecting 20 foreigners. I mean, you know how many players they play in the big league and call me looking for jobs? It's a lot. It's a lot of players without a job. And the Mexican League has been a great place for so many people for so many years. I'm talking about people like Winston Janas, to me, to so many others now. And not only playing baseball, but also managing, coaching, front offices. And talent-wise, I always believe that Mexico does have talent. They mature a little late when it comes to it. Because remember, it used to happen in the past that a Mexican player used to come to the state and they don't care that much because they have a job in the summer playing for the summer league, and they also have a winter league, and they have a whole bunch of league in the weekends. Mm-hmm. But now they take it more seriously. And I believe that next years to come, you're going to see more major leaguers out of Mexico.
So a lot of these international players, especially from the Dominican Republic, they sign when they're around 16 years old or so. How important is it for these young Latin American players to surround themselves with the right people, the right team, in order to maintain success and continue to climb each level?
Well, it takes a lot, because actually when they come out of their houses, we don't know the problems that they have. And when they go to the state, we don't know how. Because sometimes you see the right guy, probably that's the wrong guy. And it's important to watch him and guide them. I remember one time when I got a phone call from Carlos Rodriguez, at that time my boss with the Rays, and he called me and he says, Eddie, I'm not going to ask you to manage, but I need you to be on uniform because we're going to have good talent to come for July 2nd. And I say, yes, sure. And I did it for like 3 years. I go there, get in uniform, and what they call the Tricky League. They play, I believe, it was like 30 games, something like that. And I remember when I met Wonder Franco, great kid, great kid. I mean, it's very sad what's going on, but the transition of a youngster from point A to point C, that gap is who he knows in there, how success is coming to his shoulders, who he's going to deal with, and what he's going to do with his money. Remember, they don't have any type of education.
Mm-hmm.
It's tough.
So, considering these challenges and opportunities, how do you envision the future of baseball, especially as it relates to our organization?
Oh, it's going to be great. I mean, one thing that the Cash always demand is excellent. And one thing about Cash is he makes decisions. He doesn't. He's like a pilot, and when you're on a plane, a lot of people is worried about being in the plane, but in reality, a pilot, before he leaves, he have to check the plane, he have to check everything, and later he sign a piece of paper. So the pilot cannot make mistake. In Cash, it's like a pilot. He doesn't like to make mistakes, and if he knows that any of us make any mistake, we're gonna hear him.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, Eddie, as we start to wrap up here, in what ways do you believe our organization is poised to shape the future of baseball around the globe?
What I like the most is the team that we have, including you.
Thank you.
Including Herbie, JB, and on and on and on, Garrett. So it's not just the individuals that we in the baseball operation. No. Everything is a chain. And that's what the last time that when we meet every week, which and I start looking at each one of you, people don't know how big the operation is. People might think is, well, Cash has John Mildredge, the legends behind, and 5 guys running a deal. No, this operation is sound, stable, and hungry. We all hungry. We want to make sure that we are successful because we in the same book. The problem that happen with athletes in the ball club is the same that happen in companies. Everybody have their own agenda. But if we all together get that agenda and convert it into one book, which is that actually what Catch wants to do, we going in the same direction. That's how we're going to get things successful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. El Comandante, thank you very much for joining our conversation here at Baseball United. And I look forward to the next time I get to speak to you, my friend.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time. I appreciate what you're doing. And Catch was right. You are brilliant in what you do. You got a great personality, as Mona is saying, the other young guys working in Baseball United, people that they don't know what they're doing and doing great things. And all I have to say to you is world blessings to you and your family.
Likewise, Eddie. Thank you very much. I'll talk to you soon, my friend.
Take care.